the Sports Quotient video of the Stanley Cup Finals preview. I'm here with Luke Hoban and Jacob Gabetz, and we are going to tell you all about the Stanley Cup Finals matchup. We got two great teams, and the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Chicago Blackhawks, two teams that I believe a lot of people picked to be here, at least for the Blackhawks. The Lightning might have been a bit of a surprise to some people, but make no mistake, they are a very dangerous squad. Now, with all that settled, let's get to our first question, and that is, please tell me how each team was able to get here. Luke, we'll go with you.
Yeah, so Tampa Bay really got to the finals with a bunch of different people stepping up at different times. So from the start of the playoffs, their best player, like unquestionably Steven Stamkos, had, quite frankly, a bad start to the playoffs, and the next line underneath him of Kucherov, Palat, and Johnson really stepped up. And then throughout the playoffs, as Stamkos got better, those three, again, sort of took a little bit of a backseat to him. And Ben Bishop, their goalie, really stepped up when they needed to with Game 7 shutouts in two different series, which is not something you see every day, especially from a goalie like Bishop, who, quite frankly, going into the playoffs was probably considered the weakness in that team. And then their defense stepped up as well. It's really been a complete team effort. Chicago, on the other hand, has really relied on their top-level talent of Taves and Kane and Duncan Keith. They've been really riding those guys hard to make sure that they can squeeze the most production out of them. Just quite frankly, their third pair on defense and their bottom six are not nearly as good as as Tampa Bay's, and they're going to need to keep that up throughout the playoffs.
All right, Jacob, let's hear your answers.
So Tampa Bay has been using their speed all postseason. They've been blown by these big defensemen, and they've been able to drive to the net. They've been able to make the goalies move, and they've also been able to just throw the game plan out of whack for the opposite team. So they've been able to, should I say, sort of disarray the defense in order to find opportunities to score against goalies. Not only just against goalies, but top-seeded goalies. Lundqvist, Carey Price. These are not typical goalies. These are really good goalies, and they're getting 6-5 goals against them, and they keep pushing and pushing and pushing line after line after line, and it just wears teams down. Aside from that, their power play has really picked up since the first series against Detroit. They started off slow, but now they're fifth in the postseason and converting those power plays into power play goals. And the PK has also been really solid as the postseason went on. And of course, the triplets line, you can't really say enough about them. I mean, they've basically been the driving force of this team in the first two series before Stamkos started getting going. So definitely it was all up to them to sort of drive this offense until Stamkos and the other lines got it going. And basically they have a perfect record when they're leading after one period. And after they're leading after period two, they have a 100% chance of winning. So basically they score first, they put pressure on the opposite team to score more goals than they can, and they hold them off. That's basically how they've been able to win. And of course, Ben Bishop has been wonderful. I mean, everybody criticized him before the postseason saying experience will catch up to him, but it really hasn't. He's made a few gaffes, and he's not perfect, but he's really been able to keep the team in the games when the offense has been slumping. As for the Hawks, they basically been winning by scoring. They're third in the postseason in goals per game, while they're only 12th in goals allowed per game. So they score a lot, but they also allow a lot of goals. Their defense is pretty shallow, so they have to rely on their offense to keep them in games at times. And they're pretty resilient due to their experience, and they don't really seem to panic much, even when they're behind. So they're definitely a team that has relied on their experience, their resiliency, and their top lines, like Luke said. So that's basically all I have for the Blackhawks.
All right, good answers, both of you. For me, for the Lightning, I think the three big reasons are Tyler Johnson. He leads all postseason skaters in goals and points, and it's not necessarily how many goals he's been scoring. It's when he's been scoring. He's probably been the most clutch player in these playoffs. Like, I can think of one example when Tampa Bay was down 2-0 in Detroit with like only 5 minutes going, and Tyler Johnson was like, all right, well, that's enough. It's time to put things back in order. And he gets 3 points in a span of, what, like 3-4 minutes, 2 goals, 1 assist. It was incredible. And then, not sure if you mentioned it, Jacob, but the Lightning have been very resilient. I mean, their record after loss is an incredible 7-1. So I don't know what it is, but it seems like every time these guys lose, they're just like, oh, we gotta actually do something here. Thanks for reminding us. And you can't ignore Victor Hedman either. I mean, he's basically evolved into this top D man that we've been waiting for forever. He's been fantastic in the playoffs. I believe he's second in the postseason in plus minus behind Duncan Keith. So, and then of course Ben Bishop, who I admit has been shaky at times, but he stepped up when it matters the most. 2 Game 7 shutouts. Enough said. As for the Blackhawks, well, I think in the end it's pretty much their experience. Like, the whole core of the group, they won 2 cups in 4 years. They've been there before. They almost went there last year until they lost to the Kings. So they know what it's like. Taves, Kane, Keith, Seabrook, Sharp, all those guys, they've been there before, and they've stepped up tremendously. All right, now for my next question is, who was under more pressure, Corey Crawford and Ben Bishop? Now, you might ask, why would Corey Crawford be in this discussion? Because he's won the cup before. He knows what it's like. Well, that's the thing, because sometimes knowing what it's like can weigh on you, because everybody's expecting to do well. It's like, well, you've been there before. You know what it's like. Show us the way. While for Ben Bishop, he's never been in the Stanley Cup Finals before, and to face a team like the Hawks, that's not going to be easy for him at all. So please give me your answers. We'll go with Jacob first.
Okay. So Crawford is definitely under more pressure because, as you mentioned, he's the most experienced. They're looking to him for guidance, and especially what happened earlier in the postseason when he got subbed for Scott Darling against the Predators. So there was a lot of criticism and pressure on him to perform at the peak of what he's used to step it up to for the postseason. On the other hand, Bishop, I think inexperience actually may be a benefit for him, because as you see, he's one of the most resilient goalies in the league. He's 7-1 when coming off a loss. That's going to get you far in the postseason. So I think inexperience may actually sort of, how should I say, drive him, or it doesn't weigh on his mind as much as it does on Crawford. Not to mention just the fan pressure on Crawford is tremendous, whereas for the Lightning it may not be nearly as heavy set as the Chicago Blackhawks. So I think Bishop sort of has the edge, and Crawford's definitely getting more pressure to win this another title for the Blackhawks. Not to mention that in this offseason, the cap is definitely going to take its toll on the Blackhawks. So this may be the last time that all these players are on the same team before next year comes. And that's basically...
All right, what's yours?
Yeah, I would have to agree. I would say Crawford as well. I think that the Blackhawks going into the playoffs, everyone looking at them as the favorite, automatically puts all the pressure on them in general. And I think that because Chicago's defense in front of Crawford has been very good at the top, but not very good the third pair of them, that's going to really test. Tampa's really going to test that and put a lot of the onus on Corey Crawford in a way that they haven't. Well, that Nashville certainly didn't, and that Minnesota didn't. Anaheim did, but that was one series. And I think that Bishop has been playing very well in this playoffs, like you've been saying. But I think there's a more unknown quantity with him because he hasn't won. And so, like, theoretically, if he were to collapse in the finals, that would be obviously very bad for Tampa, but it would also kind of meet everyone's expectations from the start of the year affected to be looking at which goalie is going to be under more pressure. And if Crawford collapses, there's no one there that is going to back him up with that. Tampa has a little more. Tampa also has more depth, so I think that there's a little less of a weight on his shoulders, whereas Crawford is definitely expected to be the guy.
All right. I actually agree with both of you. I think both are going to be under a great amount of pressure, but
Yeah.
Crawford will definitely be under more pressure, like Jacob pretty much said. The media pressure in Chicago is 10 times higher than the media pressure in Tampa. So automatically, people are looking over at Crawford thinking, all right, you messed us up, we're gonna chop your head off, because that's pretty much the thing. Well, really, for both goalies, really, whoever loses, the goalie's been getting most of the blame. So Crawford has won a cup before, obviously, but the whole city of Chicago is expecting him to win another one for the Hawks. And if he fails, well, I shouldn't necessarily say he fails because it's a team effort. But if they fail, it won't look good at all. But we will see what happens. All right, my next question is, all right. So we have two great coaches in the finals, in John Cooper and Joel Quenneville. All right. John Cooper, despite this only being his second full season, has taken the Lightning all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. He has outcoached and completely outclassed some veteran coaches who have been in the league a lot longer. He's been a winner in every single level, and he's won a championship in the second season of, I think it's at least most of the leagues he's coached in. So let me ask, if Tampa Bay wins the Stanley Cup, where would you rank John Cooper among current coaches? Luke, let's go with you.
Yeah, this is a hard question for me. I really don't know because, like you said, it's only his second full season. So I think that automatically any coach with a Stanley Cup win is definitely in that conversation. I think the two best are clearly Quenneville and Babcock. I think those two are head and shoulders above anyone else in the league right now. I think that there's like a whole gaggle of coaches below them, but I think I'm going to have to consider Cooper like on the backside of the top 5, certainly in the top 10. I think he's already there now. But like in terms of pinning down a spot, because he doesn't have the track record at the NHL level, I can't really narrow it down and say, I don't really know whether he's better than like Claude Julien, for example, who has had a downturn the past couple of years, but certainly has had a more successful career, or like McClellan, who's been at it longer, who hasn't won a cup, but who's been close for a while. You know, so it's kind of apples and oranges. I do think that John Cooper would be in that conversation for a top 5 spot, but I can't really give you a firmer answer than that, as much as I would like to.
Okay, that's definitely fair. All right, Jacob, let's hear your answer.
Yeah, this one was definitely a tough question, like Luke said. But being as biased as I am, I would definitely rank him, in the top 5. He's only shown tremendous success since he's been in the league. His first season, he had a tremendous record in the regular season, and he had he didn't have a tremendous record, but he did get swept in the playoffs. But this season, he proved that he wasn't a fluke. He wasn't just like coming in and, taking over talent and sort of pushing them. No, it showed that he is a coach in the NHL. He can adapt, and he has proven that this postseason and in the regular season. For example, if you look back at the games in this series, he's basically duplicated 3 games. Game 7 against Detroit, Game 5 against New York, Game 7 against New York, all 2-0 victories. And there's a reason for that, because he changed his game scheme to match those specific teams. And he sort of took the team and he created a better defensive scheme to sort of protect Bishop. And when you're a really good coach who can analyze his opponents like that, you know that you're going to have to change stuff or change your scheme in order to outmatch the other team when they have more experience, such as the Red Wings. So, like you said, he's outcoached Mike Babcock. That was amazing. He's pushed against a team that swept him last year. That shows that he can adapt to adversity, and he doesn't have anything weighing on his mind from last season. He sort of resets. That's a good coach. And overall, I think there's a totally different climate when a coach can come in and he inherits talent compared to what Cooper did. He came in and Yzerman gave him talent, but that doesn't mean he'll always succeed. He knew where to plug those pieces in, and they succeed. So just like the triplets, he created the triplets. He'll never take credit for it. He'll always be humble. He'll say, oh, well, I just sort of put them together and they made their magic. And that's true. But, I mean, he's the driving force in that. He did it. So I think that he's really displayed a lot of great coaching talents thus far. But obviously, it's only been a few years, so we're going to have to wait probably another year or two and see how he does. But as of now, among current coaches, I would definitely rank him in the top 5.
All right. Good answers, both of you. For me, I already consider him to be a top 10, no question. If he does win a cup, I think I would have to be in the top 5. Like, maybe not top 3, probably just at number 5, but his accomplishments so far have been incredible. I mean, for this to be only your second full season, and you've already guided Tampa Bay, which, by the way, already is the youngest team in the playoffs, to the finals. You outcoached great coaches like Mike Babcock and Alain Vigneault, and then you outcoached the guy, Michel Therrien, who swept you guys last year. That's just incredible, and it shows that he can learn a lot in just a short amount of time. So if he wins, I would definitely put him top 5. Just barely, but still top 5. Now, we're going on to Joel Quenneville, who, like Luke said, has, if Mike Babcock is the best coach in the league, then it's Joel Quenneville. Far and away, no questions asked. He has been absolutely incredible. He's the third coach in NHL history to reach 700 wins, which is obviously not a very easy feat. Now, he's won 2 cups in 4 years for the Blackhawks, and one could argue that he has the luxury of having a very talented team, but like Jacob pretty much said, it doesn't really matter what talent you have if you don't properly use it. A good coach knows how to use his talent, know how to properly manage it, and whatnot. So my question is, if Joel Quenneville gets a cup this year, where would you rank him among all-time coaches? Not just current coaches, but all-time coaches. Jacob, let's hear from you.
That is tough. But I guess
glad you're going first.
So for Quenneville, I'd say he deserves to be pretty high on the list. I mean, like you said, it certainly helps that he has players, such as Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Brent Seabrook, Duncan Keith, and a wealthy prospect to choose from, such as Teuvo Teravainen. I think that's how you pronounce it. And so
Teravainen or something, yeah.
Teravainen, yeah.
Sorry, name.
I'll just call him Teuvo. But yeah, so it certainly helps that he has those kinds of players to choose from. But as I mentioned for Cooper, you have to insert those players in the right spots, or else they won't really be effective. So he's clearly displayed success throughout his entire tenure, and he certainly deserves a lot of credit for adapting his team to face the changing times. I mean, to be able to be consecutively successful with the same team over and over as other teams are changing, he definitely deserves a lot of nods for that. So I would rank him pretty high on the list.
All right, Luke, let's hear from you about Joel Quenneville.
Yeah, this is also not an easy thing to do, as Jacob was saying. And I think it's really hard to separate him from the team because they're kind of like the identity of the team. Think Chicago Blackhawks of the last 5 or 6 years. You think Jonathan Toews, you think Patrick Kane, 3 of them that have been dating back to the 2010 Cup run. And if Quenneville wins 3 Cups in 6 years, this is kind of jumping ahead a little bit. If he wins 3 Cups in 6 years, in the salary cap era, that's one of the most impressive accomplishments of any coach. Like, that doesn't have a Wayne Gretzky or a Mario Lemieux or the Canadiens' entire roster. And so I do think that he would be near the top of that list. again, I can't specifically say where he would be, but you have to think he's in the top 5 if he wins 3 cups in 6 years with 3 cups in 5 years with a different roster. The roster has changed from 20 to 2015, and to win 3 cups in 5 years with the salary cap in place, with no generational talent. Taves and Kane are very good, 2 of the best players in the league, but they don't have, the one guy that was gonna, like a Wayne Gretzky who won all those cups. I think that's one of the greatest coaching accomplishments of all time if he gets it done.
All right, great points, both of you. You have a good argument for top 5. I don't know, maybe I would put him in the top 10 all time for sure if he gets it done. And you pretty much mentioned it, the salary cap era, which basically the salary cap is basically why we'll never really see a dynasty like the Islanders, who won four straight cups in the 80s, or the Canadiens dynasty, or who else am I thinking? Oilers.
Yeah.
But winning 3 cups in 6 years, especially in this kind of era with a salary cap, that's incredible. So, not to mention, I don't remember who said it. I think it was Jacob, but to win consecutively with basically the same core, because obviously the salary cap caused them to change some of the roster from 2010 to 2015, but much of their core has been intact. So if he can win another cup, that'll be extremely impressive, and I think I would definitely put him in the top 10 without question. All right, next question. Give me each team's strengths and weaknesses. Luke, let's go with you. Let's start with the Lightning. Give me their strengths and weaknesses.
Well, this is the Lightning's strength to me as sort of an outsider that hasn't really followed them all season like you two. But the strength really seems to be in their number 1 strength would definitely be their top 2 forward lines, with Steven Stamkos on the 1, and the second line, I guess they're the second line, if you want to call them that, being Andre Palat, Kucherov, and Tyler Johnson. If you can even call them a second line, as ridiculous as that sounds, how good they are. Those 2 lines are really hard to match up against, and that is the definite question team in my book. And the weakness, I would have to say, going into the playoffs, it was definitely Ben Bishop. And I think there's still something that can be exploited there if you play him right, if you get guys to the front of the net. He's a big guy. He's like 6'7". He's one of the biggest goalies in the league. I think he is the biggest goalie in the league. And that's really hard to get touched by him. But if you play him right, you can use that big frame to your advantage and get him moving side to side, get bodies in front of him, and take advantage of all the weird angles that are going to happen. You saw him against the Rangers a couple times in Game 7. He was playing very well, obviously, and got a shutout. But, sometimes being so huge is a disadvantage if you lose track of where your body is. And the only way you can make him do that is get bodies to the front of the net and bang at him and make him uncomfortable. And if the Blackhawks can do that, that's probably what the Tampa's weakness is going to be. If they don't do that, I don't really know what their weakness would be, to be totally honest, because their defense has been playing very well. They have good depth on offense, and if Ben Bishop plays well, that's that. You know what I'm saying?
All right, that's definitely fair. All right, Jacob, let's hear from you. The strengths and weaknesses of the Tampa Bay Lightning team.
So for the Lightning, I may sound like a broken record, but I got to say their speed. Their speed is everything. It's basically what got them past the Red Wings. It's basically what got them past the Canadiens, and it also got them past the Rangers. As fast as those teams were, we were also faster. So we really get the opposing teams, or how should I say, defense off like flat-footed. We catch them flat-footed constantly. If you see the Lightning play, you'll often see one time when the other team is doing a line change out of, I don't know, putting up with the triplets line, and then Ben Bishop takes it and just, boom, shoots it up, and JT Brown takes it and charges into the net. That puts pressure on the other team. That's all due to speed. That's all to wearing them out. So I think, in a way, that agrees with Luke about the top two lines because they wear the opposing defense out so fast and so constantly that you don't even really give the opposing team a chance to really change cleanly because you're always constantly putting pressure on them. As for the weakness, I would actually have to disagree. I think that some of the defensive pieces are definitely a problem. Or Matt Carl making some pretty boneheaded moves, and they tend to have a lot of giveaways and not as many takeaways as they should. I believe every time I looked, every other game, they'd have a lot more giveaways, and they somehow still managed to win. But some of those behind the back turnovers or those fancy passes that end up in the Lightning zone as a turnover, and an opposing forward gets a one-on-one on Bishop, that's really just cutting it close. You can't really make those kind of mistakes if you give it away to like Patrick Kane or Patrick Sharp or Jonathan Toews. You can't make those kinds of mistakes. So I would definitely say that's got to be a weakness. If they can shore up Suster, which he did play tremendously well the last two-thirds of the Rangers game in Game 7, and Matt Carl, if he can use his physical ability a little more, that'd be great. But I think it's definitely going to depend on some of those back pieces because those are where teams are going to score their goals against. So that would be mine.
All right. Good answers, both of you. I think for me, the strength of the Lightning, I mean, obviously we all know how good their offense is, their speed, the triplets, obviously everyone knows how awesome they are, but I'm going to have to say that their strength is their resiliency. Their record after a loss is an incredible 7-1. The only loss being when they got blown out of the water against Montreal 6-2 at Amalie Arena, and then they lost again at Montreal. But other than that, it seems like whenever this group loses, they just basically regroup, say, all right, what do we have to do? What mistakes did we make? All right, let's not make those mistakes again. Let's go out there. So basically, their ability to respond well after losses has been incredible, and it's been a huge reason why they've made it that far. Now, their weakness, I'm going to have to agree with Jacob here. I think their weakness is definitely defensive inconsistency. Like, you look at some games, and Tampa's defense looks amazing. Like, in Game 6 against Montreal, Game 5 against what was the game their first 2-0 shutout in New York? Do you remember what that was?
Game 5.
All right,
Game
cool.
5 and Game 7 they shut them out.
All right, cool. Game 5 and Game 7, their defense looked incredible. Although there were also some games where the defense looked absolutely horrible, like turnovers, letting them escape their zone. It looked pathetic. So obviously, some games looked incredible. Other games looked really, really bad. So if they're going to make it far, like win the cup, their defense has to be consistently good. Now we're on to the Hawks. So we'll start with you, Jacob. Please give me the strength and weakness of the Blackhawks.
Well, I think I basically have to go with their top two lines. They're an offensive team. We've known this. We saw them against the Ducks. They drop, 4 or 5 goals, and then they come back with 2 of the 3 goals in a matter of minutes. They're a very offensive, capable team, and that's basically what they're going to have to use in order to beat us because there's no way that Crawford or, their defense is going to be able to constantly stop the triplets for so long. I'm not saying there's going to be any blowouts. I think every game is going to be really close, but it's definitely going to be an offensive game, and it's basically going to be Patrick Kane, Patrick Sharp, and the crew versus the triplets and Stamkos. And that's basically the Blackhawks' I think, strongest strength.
And what about their weakness?
Oh, the weakness? Yeah, I definitely have to go with it's really kind of a toss-up between their lack of defensive depth and their goaltending. I mean, if we go back to Crawford, like I mentioned earlier, he was pulled from a series against the Predators in the first round, and he got replaced by a rookie, Scott Darling. Well, maybe I shouldn't call him a rookie, but he was definitely not the starter that was supposed to get them past the Predators. So he's not a very consistent goalie. If you can make a move and you can make some crisp passes and beat him with speed, you can probably score a lot against them. And their other weakness has to be their defense. Aside from Duncan Keith and Brent Seabrook and maybe Hjalmarsson, I don't really see a lot of key pieces such as Strawman, Garrison, Hedman, or the others. I just don't see their defensive depth matching the Lightning's at this point.
All right, Luke, give me your strengths and weaknesses of the Chicago Blackhawks.
So the strength at this point in the Stanley Cup Finals, you have two teams that are amazing teams, top to bottom, very talented. I think the main strength at this point for Chicago is that they've done it before. They have 3 or 4 guys that are at the top of their roster that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. If their careers ended now, Taves, Kane, and Keith, and probably Marian Hossa would all end up in the Hall of Fame. And when you look across at the other roster, you got Tampa Bay, you got Stamkos, the triplets down the line for sure. But Chicago's resume right now and their experience in the playoffs is unparalleled by any team in the league. And I think at this point in the playoffs, that's a huge plus for them. And I think their weakness is sort of the opposite of that. Because if you look at their bottom pairing on defense, you look at their top guys with Duncan Keith and Taves and like Hjalmarsson, amazing players, but they're like Timo Timonen at this point in his career. I love Timo Timonen so much from being a Flyer for 7 years, but he is not a good defenseman anymore. And he's pulled, and now they got their bottom guys. I looked at it earlier today. They're playing like 8 minutes a game. Their bottom pairing defensemen. That's not going to get it done. They're playing with fire right now, quite frankly, on the blue line. And Duncan Keith, if you want to pick one defenseman in the NHL that you would want to play with fire, it's Duncan Keith. And he's good enough to shoulder that load. But it's a huge question for me as to whether that's going to be a sustainable strategy against an offense like Tampa's. It very well might be. He might be good enough. I don't know. But there's a very real chance that comes crashing down at some point during these finals. And it just doesn't, and Tampa's able to run rampant on them.
Yeah, good points, both of you. For the strength of Blackhawks, I'm going to have to go with their experience. Their core has been there before. They know what it's like. They can handle the pressure, and pretty much, yes, they've done it before. So their weakness, though, I'm going to have to go with their defense because, their defense was really good in the regular season. I think they were second in goals against average. However, in the postseason, it's been completely different. They're giving up almost 3 goals a game, and then they're almost giving up 40 shots a game. Against an offensive firepower like Tampa, that's not going to cut it. You can't allow nearly 40 shots a game, nearly 3 goals a game against a team like Tampa and expect to win. That's not going to happen at all. And then you have to realize the fact that they're rolling 4 D-men right now who are, I believe, logging 30 minutes of ice time. That is a lot of ice time, and you need defensive depth. That is very important. So, in the end, maybe it won't matter. Maybe they'll be able to overcome it. But if they do lose to Tampa, that will definitely be a big reason why. All right, let's see what the next question is. Okay. Do you believe that the experience of the Hawks, 2 cups 4 years, maybe a 3rd cup in six years, everything about them, do you think the experience of the Hawks will intimidate the Tampa Bay Lightning, who are the youngest team in the playoffs, or do you think the Lightning will once again be able to handle the pressure like they've been able to do in their first 3 series? Luke, let's go with you.
I don't think at this point in the playoffs the experience will intimidate the Lightning. I think it'll help Chicago a lot, but I don't think that Tampa's going to go out there and be afraid of Jonathan Taves or be afraid of Duncan Keith. I think that there might be secondary effects of that, where Chicago knows how to play in the finals better. That might happen, and that might impact how Tampa Bay plays, but I don't think that's going to like actually directly cause Tampa Bay to play worse or cause them to be intimidated. I think Tampa will be fine. I think the Rangers are a very good team. Montreal, certainly with Carey Price, is a very good team. These are not teams that can beat in the playoffs without being a talented team. So I think that it's not going to be. I'm not saying the Tampa Bay is going to win because I don't know whether they're going to win, but I don't think that it's going to be caused by them being like, oh no, Chicago's going to win 3 cups in 5 years. What are we going to do? Like, this is terrifying. Like, I don't think that's going to be something that happens. I'm not saying that's what you said, but like, you know what I'm getting.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. All right. Great answer. Jacob, let's hear from you.
Highly doubt it. The Lightning have played in Joe Louis, Bell Center, Madison Square Garden. 3 of the original 6 teams. They've beaten each of these teams in their home. They're already used to the pressure. They're already used to the fans hating them. They're already used to the loud chants. They're already used to the classic goal celebration songs. They're already used to all that. Now, maybe this is going back to inexperience. Maybe that kind of helps them because they have nothing to lose. Everyone will be there next year. They're out to sort of prove everyone wrong, and that may create a little pressure, but they're the underdogs. I think Chicago definitely has way more pressure on their hands than the Lightning, for sure. I just don't really see them saying, oh man, this team, we're going to take on Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews and Duncan Keith. Oh no, I don't think they're going to say that. I think they're going to, gather up, they're going to regroup, they're going to say, all right guys, this team, they're beatable. The Ducks almost did it. I think we can do basically what the Ducks couldn't do. And I think they can, if any team can really exploit the defenses in Chicago, I really think it's Tampa Bay because they have the speed to be able to do it and to be able to wear out that shallow defense and make Crawford move around. So, yeah, I don't think they're scared at all. If you've ever seen them, going around or traveling or how they don't play scared. They play smart and they play hungry. So I don't think they'll be intimidated whatsoever. Not in the slightest.
Great answers by both of you. And I also agree. Will they be nervous? Maybe slightly. Intimidated? I don't think so. I mean, I absolutely loved what Stamkos said when someone told him about Lundqvist's record in Game 7s and elimination games, and he goes, yeah, well, that's nice, but he's never played us before, so that alone shows the confidence. I mean, they weren't supposed to win Game 7 against Detroit because Mike Babcock was way better than John Cooper, supposedly. Nope, didn't happen. They weren't supposed to beat the Canadians because, for whatever reason, if you're swept last year, that automatically dictates how you're going to do this year against the same team. And then they blew their chances to clinch the cup at home, and then they're going to Madison Square Garden, where in Game 7s, the Rangers previously had an undefeated record in. So, of course, everyone's going to say, oh, New York's going to win, which obviously I suppose that was justified. But look what happened. Tampa goes, we don't care about your record. You've never played us. They come in, they back up their word, and now they're in the Stanley Cup Finals. So, obviously, it's quite different with the Blackhawks because they've won 2 cups in 4 years. But the confidence that they have gained up to this point has to be huge for them. They don't care about your record. They don't care how many cups you've won. They don't care how much experience you have. You've never played them before. All right. I think I only have a couple more questions.
And to add on to that, real fast, I want to say that they've broken so many franchise and NHL records this season. I really don't think they're gonna believe that the Blackhawks are an obstacle. They've already broken so many records and franchise records this season. I mean, it's just another tally on. So,
of course.
Just want to say that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. If the Chicago Blackhawks, hold up 1 second. Okay. If the Chicago Blackhawks win their 3rd cup in 6 years, would you consider it to be one of the best dynasties in NHL history? And you have to consider the salary cap era. We're never going to see a dynasty like the Islanders, Oilers, Canadians ever again. but still, consider the salary cap era and how Chicago's been able to do. So if they win their third cup in 6 years, should it be considered one of the greatest dynasties in NHL history? Luke, let's go with you.
Yeah, so I think the answer is a resounding yes. If you look back at the list of Stanley Cup champions and all the dynasties that exist, you have the Montreal Canadiens of the 1950s, 1960s. You have the Mike Bossy Islanders, and then that's really kind of it. You have a couple teams in the 90s that won a couple cups here and there, or back-to-back cups, with the Wings and the Lemieux Penguins. But other than that, I think Chicago has to be in the conversation of one of the greatest dynasties of all time, especially like you were saying, with the salary cap, because they essentially, after 2010, had to remake their team. Remember, one of their biggest contributors in 2010 was Dustin Byfuglien, and now he's in the middle of Manitoba doing his thing, and the Blackhawks are back in the Stanley Cup Finals for a third time. And I don't think that, that's clearly not an easy thing to do. And I think, like you were saying earlier, David, that really has to be taken into account. And they're clearly playing under a different set of rules than teams in the past were, and they're succeeding at almost the same level. And that's ridiculously impressive in the level of the parity in the NHL we're seeing today.
Great answer. All right, Jacob, let's hear from you.
In the salary cap era, yes, definitely. Now, I think we've all basically discussed about it thus far, but coaches these days and teams these days, they have a lot more handicaps and a lot more restrictions than past teams. So you can't really compare them to, a team in the 1940s or 50s or 60s, maybe not even the 70s, considering that the salary cap era has really sort of restricted some of these teams from going out and picking up the highest talented players and sort of just stacking their team. Teams of today don't really have that in the salary cap era, so I think the constant success, and they're always in the playoffs, so obviously they're a very successful team, they're going to definitely be called a dynasty in one way or another. Now, between them and the Kings have won 2 titles in 3 years, and they're always a threat in the postseason, but we're not calling them a dynasty yet either. So I think they're on the verge of a dynasty. If they win this postseason, if they win the Stanley Cup this season, then I think they will be considered a dynasty in many people's minds. But I think, for me personally, I think I would have to see them probably win one more in the next year or two as well, and then they would definitely solidify their placement in one of the top dynasties of all time.
All right, that's a good answer. But I think I'm going to have to agree with Luke here. I mean, I've said before, we'll never see another dynasty like all those other teams I mentioned, but the salary cap era, the fact that this is their third cup, and the time span that they're in is incredibly impressive. And obviously, like Luke said, Dustin Byfuglien was huge. No, I don't mean that literally, because he is huge, but
both.
Yeah. Yes. So actually, yes, his size and his strength obviously helped Chicago get past those teams in 2010. And once he had to go in other players, that obviously affected Chicago a lot. But it didn't affect them that much because, as you can see, they were still able to make the playoffs. But it did affect them a lot in a way that they were bounced in the first round 2 years in a row after their cup win. But now they're back on top again. Well, they're not back on top yet. If they win the cup, they'll be back on top. So I think looking at the salary cap era and, the players that come and go, restrictions, contracts, and all that, I would definitely put them among the best of all time. Certainly not the best of all time. No, that's ridiculous. But definitely in the conversation as one of the best. Now, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they are the first team in NHL history to defeat 3 original 6 teams en route to the Stanley Cup Finals. That is extremely impressive. Now, once again, they're facing another original 6 foe in the Chicago Blackhawks. So, if the Lightning can pull off this impressive feat, would you consider it to be one of the most impressive season runs ever in NHL history? Jacob, let's go with you.
With me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Very good.
For some reason my computer keeps going in and out. Anyways, so yeah, as a Lightning reporter and fan, yeah, definitely one of the most impressive runs I've seen from any team, maybe aside from the Kings. But they've had their struggles. To be clear, they certainly weren't dominant on the way up here to the Cup final. But as you said, they faced 3 of the original 6 teams, and they have the potential to be a 4th. And that's really never been done before from what is said. So I think it's really been an impressive season altogether for the Lightning. It's not like they won the President's Trophy or won the division, but I still think it's one of the best, if not the best, runs in at least franchise history. Maybe not NHL history, but definitely franchise history. This will definitely be put in the books.
All right. Good answer. Luke?
I completely think it's not. I think they've beaten some very good teams, but I think the original 6 thing is like a fun fact for sure. But I think its significance is hugely overrated. Because if you think about it, it wasn't even possible for the vast majority of NHL history because the Red Wings and Blackhawks were both in the Western Conference. So there's not even with pilots, so you have a much better chance of getting them now. Whereas in the past, you had like the matchups in the fall just right. And considering the division they're in, with the Bruins, the Red Wings, and the Canadians all there, I think that it's a fun fact. I just don't think it's in and of itself like an impressive thing. I think that their run is very impressive because every Stanley Cup team has to beat very good teams, but I don't know if I would put it up there in the NHL. Like, I think the Western Conference is just so much. This year, the East has gotten a lot better top to bottom, but for the past 5 or 6 years, at least, you know, like the Kings and Blackhawks have had to run the gauntlet every single year and come out on top, and I just don't think that, like, Carey Price and 17 other players is on that same level. With all due respect, of course. It doesn't take away from the fact that Tampa's a very good team in and of themselves. I just don't think the original 6 thing matters.
Yeah, actually, I have to agree with you. I mean, the more I thought about it, I completely agree with you. Said the whole concept of the original 6, in my opinion, is incredibly overrated. Like, oh, original 6, they're gods, they're immortal. But no, I don't buy that into that. So with that said, I think I would have to agree that maybe not one of the most impressive runs in NHL history, but I think if they pull it off, like 5 years, 10 years from now, they might not go, okay, that was one of the best runs of all time, but they might go, oh wow, they beat 4 storied franchises. That's incredible. Now, in franchise history for the Lightning, I think it would be definitely the best run in their history without question. But NHL, yeah, I definitely have to agree. The more I think about it, I mean, it's impressive, but it definitely wouldn't rank up there. So, yeah. All right, and I think I have one more question. All right, finally, the question we've all been waiting for: who is winning the Stanley Cup, and how many games, and who is getting the Conn Smythe Trophy? Luke, let's go with you.
Oh God, I have to go first. I am going to get lambasted for this, but I have to take Chicago, mostly because I'm in the past, and I just can't bring myself to do it again. I think it's going 7 games. I don't think that's much of a question for me anyway. I think Chicago edges it out. I think it's about as much of a toss-up as you can have, and I'm really banking on the fact that a guy like Duncan Keith, who I would pencil in for my Conn Smythe pick, is able to shoulder that load that I was talking about earlier. And I think if he can do that, then that's going to be enough to get them over the finish line. But honestly, I wouldn't be surprised either way. I'm not going to hedge my bets, though. I'm not going to sit on the fence because I don't want to be that kind of person. So I will put my fist down off camera and say Chicago in 7 and Duncan Keith wins the Conn Smythe.
Okay, Jacob, let's hear from you. Who's winning the series and how many games? Who's winning the Conn Smythe Trophy?
Lightning in 7, obviously. And as for the Conn Smythe Trophy, I think Tyler Johnson is going to get it. I think he's going to show up this series. He sort of faded in and out the last series against the Rangers, whereas Palat and Kucherov kind of took the lead the last 2 series. But I think he's going to come back. I think he's going to score probably around 5 to, well, I should probably say like maybe 4 to 7 goals this series. I think they're going to really give Chicago a run for their money. And I think their speed may overcome experience in this day and age. So.
All right, good answers, both of you. As for me, it's a toss-up, but I'm gonna have to go with probably Lightning in 7 and in a very, very hard-fought 7-game series. Obviously, you have the Hawks with their experience and all. But I think, once again, the Lightning are going to use that as motivation. They're inexperienced. They're young. Most of them have never been to the Cup Finals before. I think Filppula, Morrow, Boyle, and Strawman are the only players who have been to the Cup Finals. Other than that,
Coburn.
none of them know what it's like. Oh, Coburn with the
Flyers died. Come on now.
yeah, ironically,
Coburn
was against the Blackhawks.
Yeah, Coburn and Carl both lost to the Blackhawks.
Oh my
so,
God.
I mean, it's already over.
I can't believe I forgot about Carl. Yeah, but anyway, I think it's going to be a very hard-fought series. I actually think we're going to see some close wins. I think we might see a couple blowout wins. I think we're going to see Tampa blow out Chicago in 1 game. I think we'll probably see Chicago blow out Tampa in 1 game because that's just the kind of teams that both of them are. So, as for the Conn Smythe, no question, give it to Tyler Johnson right now. Well, if the Lightning win it, give him the Conn Smythe. It's not necessarily because he has most goals and points, but it's when he scored them. Like I mentioned, down 2-0 to Detroit, and he basically put the entire team on his back and carried them to victory. He's been incredible, and I'm going to look at him to perform at some very high expectations. So, and then of course at home. Now it's been a little different with the Lightning. They were dominant at home, mediocre on the road in the regular season. But for whatever odd reason, they've been mediocre at home, but dominant on the road in the postseason. It's kind of hard to explain, but that's just how it is. But I think in the finals, they're going to be inspired to play well in front of their fans. So I think in Game 7, it's going to be 4-3, triple overtime. Lightning get the cup. Tyler Johnson gets the Conn Smythe Trophy.
I will say, it is worth noting that Tampa Bay, I just checked, Tampa Bay is going to have the home game staff for what you will. I also saw that Chicago won the Cup Finals the last 2 times on the road. So if it goes to Game 7, I don't know. That might mean absolutely nothing at all. And I might just be trying to stereotype. That's a real chance. But it might play to their advantage, it might not. But I do think that's something that's going to be a factor. Just that building's going to be loud in Tampa.
Yeah. So now, I actually do have one more question. What do you guys think of these teams being in the finals? I mean, obviously, you look at these teams, they're not very big, they're both speedy. Do you think this is the beginning of a new era where the speed and skill takes over? Because look at the Bruins, look at the Kings. None of them, they didn't even make the playoffs. And they're both complete opposites of these teams. They're big, sturdy, and physical. So, do you think the finals we're seeing right now is the beginning of a new era where speed and skill trumps size and physicality? Let's go with Luke first.
First?
Yeah. Did you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I heard the question. I just didn't hear what you said, me or Jacob.
I know what you mean.
Yeah, no, I think the answer is yes. Quite frankly, I think just that's the way it goes. with all the emphasis nowadays on like the puck possession and shots and all the advanced stats that are making their way into the league, I think speed and skill is definitely the way to go. I think big, like, quote-unquote, big, strong, stay-at-home defensemen are going away in this league. And not to get off topic, but I think the Flyers are a good example of that. You look at these two teams, they're two of the fastest teams in the league. They're two of the most skilled teams in the league. And then you look at a team like the Flyers, who have skilled players, but their defensemen are a bunch of, like, traffic pylons that don't do anything. They can block shots, and that's it. You're able to get up ice quickly, and you can't just be bogged down in your own zone all the time. And I think these two teams are great examples of that.
All right, Jacob, let's hear from you.
Well, the best defense is the best offense. If you have speedy forwards going forward, then they can also get back quickly too when they need to. So I think to answer your question, it's difficult because I think the more balanced the team is, the better. But if we're talking about speed over physicality, then yeah, I think it's starting to overtake big physical teams, and they don't really know what to do because they can't get back fast enough for odd man rushes. I've been watching the Lightning all postseason, and I've seen countless times when a bad turnover has created a 3-on-1, and I see either Tyler Johnson or Nikita Kucherov coming back quickly to make a nice forecheck to prevent that attempt from going in. So I think coaches are going to see this, and they're going to say, well, if my forwards are faster, they can also get back faster. And obviously, skill goes a long way when they're scoring goals. So, yeah, I'd have to agree that I wouldn't say it's a new era, but I think it's a trend that's going to catch on fast with a bunch of other teams.
I agree with both of you, and quite frankly, I think this might be the first final series in 5 years at least in which no team is physical. I think 2010 you had the Flyers, 2011 the Bruins, 2012 the Kings, 2013 the Bruins again, and then 2014 the Kings. This is the first final series in at least 5 years, I believe, maybe 6 or 7, in which neither team is very big, very physical. So obviously neither team's gonna have to worry about, oh, he's gonna get me. Oh, look how huge the guy is. Well, Tampa has a lot of huge people, but they're not that physical.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I mean, maybe not a new era, but it is definitely going to start a new trend that teams are going to have to, I wouldn't say go away from the physicality, because I think you definitely need at least some physicality to survive in the playoffs, but definitely add more emphasis on speed and skill, because obviously that's what these finals have. You have two teams, not very physical, not very big, but they're incredibly fast and they're incredibly skilled.
I don't think speed and skill are mutually, or size and skill are mutually exclusive either.
Yeah.
Because if you look at a team even like Anaheim, who almost made it to the Cup Finals, they're one of the most physical teams in the playoffs. And then, like Getzlaf and Perry are banging around and like laying guys out, and then on the same shift, they're skating in circles around Taves and Kane and Dr. T. So, I think that there is a certain element on both teams. I think they emphasize skill over size, but I don't think that it has to be at the expense of the other. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's a great point. All right, we're going to have to wrap this up. Jacob, give us your last thoughts, and then we will be done.
This is going to be an exciting series. Can't wait. Wednesday. It's going to be 1-goal games every game, I'm telling you right now. There may be one or two off-putting games that's like 5-1 or 5-2 or 6-3, and then it'll just go right back to being 1-goal games. I think we didn't get around to it, but I think if we're talking about like a specific player that you want to watch closely, watch Ben Bishop. Just watch him.
All right. Very good. Thank you guys so much. This is the Sports Quotient. with me, David Street, Luke Hoban, and Jacob Gobbatz. Have a great night, everyone, and thank you again.
Don't